Hi everyone, and welcome to the Graduation Bootcamp presentation. We are doing this presentation online in order to be sure that we can get everyone the information that they need and that it'll be safely accessible. My name is Ari, and I am one of the graduate assistants for the Successful Start program. We also have a additional program that we run involving peer money mentors. If that's something you're interested in, you can definitely check out our website if you Google Successful Start Boston College. We also run a range of different presentations throughout the semester. To see that list, you can also check our website. Just to name a few that we've done already this semester, we've done a presentation on evaluating job offers. We've also begun a lecture series on investing, and we have some further presentations coming up regarding creating a savings plan, as well as also renting your first apartment. For today, though, we're going to talk about some of the things that come up after you graduate. There are definitely a lot of different kind of financial concerns that might be on the mind of a student who is going to be graduating soon. We're going to talk about a few of them today. We're going to talk a bit about some of the basic things that you'll want to consider, such as budgeting and saving, as well as emergency savings. And we're also going to talk a bit about student loans, a bit about that process. And finally, we'll talk about some of the different pieces of advice we have regarding career success. So the first thing you're going to want to do is start to look into some of the basics. So you're going to want to be sure to set a list of priorities. What is most important to you financially right now? And one of the best ways to kind of get started with that is creating a budget. There are a couple different ways to do budgeting. For myself, I like to use an Excel spreadsheet, and I like to keep track of all of my receipts, but I recognize that could be maybe a bit too demanding for some people. For some people, we certainly would recommend Mint. It's a free application that you can get online. You can get it on your phone, and it will automatically keep track of all your expenses and also categorize them for you. You also can have a range of different kinds of personal banking accounts. You could have a checking account, or you could have a savings account, for instance. We have other presentations that go into a bit more detail on that, but just to kind of summarize things, checking accounts are used typically for daily purchases, lots of common things such as groceries, entertainment. There's no restrictions to how much you can use them. Whereas savings accounts can have restrictions on how much you can use them per month. Some might say you can only withdraw 6 times per month, but they will provide a rate of return. They will provide interest for your money. So they can be a good place to look, a good place to start when you're looking to start putting money aside. Like it says in the slides, life does happen and emergencies do come up. So one of the things we certainly try to recommend is that students save 3 months worth of their salary to cover living expenses. So that could be 3 months worth of rent, 3 months worth of food, 3 months worth of utilities. That can definitely be tough to do. And we know that that's not necessarily going to be possible for everyone. But what we do recommend is that everyone tries to save where they can and tries to create a fund of as much size as is possible for them. Uh, so the process of actually going about doing this, you can, in your budget, create a line item for savings. How much am I going to put away for saving each month? And then from there, for the actual process of creating a savings, you can have a savings account with a bank, and you can have direct deposit either from your paycheck. You can have a certain amount go directly into that account, or you could do automatic withdrawals from your checking account to go into the savings account. So maybe you can withdraw 5 to 10% just as an arbitrary number of your paycheck each month and put that into a savings account to go towards an emergency fund. Next, something we would recommend that you do is to engage in a personal financial checkup. This is not necessarily a strict process, but more rather some different areas that we would suggest you look in order to get an idea of what is your overall financial situation. If you follow the link on the slides, you can get information on what is your current student loan debt situation, what is the principal, and what is the interest. To get an idea of how much personal debt you have, we would recommend that you get a copy of your credit report, which includes all the different accounts that you have as well as the balances. It will also include your student loans as well on the credit report. Finally, perform an analysis of your annual salary. How much money do you make each year? And that can help give you an idea of how much your income is. We also have some tips here for managing debt, and just to highlight a couple of these. You'll certainly want to try to minimize wherever possible unnecessary or excess spending. So that can be an area where having your budget can be helpful. It'll let you figure out where can I perhaps cut down on spending. You'll also want to be sure to identify all of your debts. Having kind of that larger picture rather than viewing these things in isolation can give you an idea more so of where you stand. And finally, combining two of these together, we would certainly encourage you to organize your financial obligations, to establish financial priorities. So what we mean by that is if you have, for instance, a particular type of debt where the interest rate is higher compared to a type of debt where the interest rate is lower, you'll want to certainly prioritize the debt with the higher interest rate, since paying that off sooner could benefit you more financially. And just be sure to review all of this regularly and to reevaluate where your situation is. As a consumer, you are entitled to 3 free credit reports per year. You can get access to those by going to the link below on the slides. So for how you should use that service, you would probably be best suited by getting one every 4 months from the 3 different major credit bureaus, Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. So for instance, in April you could get Experian, in August you could get Equifax, and in December you could get TransUnion, just to give an example. So that way it'll be interspersed throughout the year, and that way you will be able to get a relatively recent picture of what your credit report looks like at any time in the year. There might be some instances where you'd want to use all 3 credit reports at once, maybe if you were making a really large purchase like a house, to see if there's any kind of discrepancies and to correct those. But otherwise, though, we would recommend that you pull one every 4 months. Lots of students find themselves having to consider whether or not to go to graduate school or to go directly from undergrad into working in a career. Some of the questions you want to ask yourself are, do I have the time? Graduate programs can certainly take a while, 2 to potentially as many as 5 or more years if you're doing a doctoral program. Graduate programs can also be pretty expensive as well. So ask yourself if you have the money to do that at this time. And lastly, ask yourself, will getting this degree help me towards my ultimate career goal? You want to be sure that getting this graduate degree is actually going to help you progress your career in the way that you want. We definitely recommend that you talk this out with your advisor, and if you do decide to apply, be sure to recognize what are the deadlines and to get your application in on time. Now we're going to shift over a bit to talking about loans. There are a lot of different reasons why you might drop below half-time enrollment, which is considered 6 or lower credits. 6 credits is considered half-time, so if you're taking at least 6 credits, you're considered half-time enrolled. Once you drop below that, it could be because you graduate, it could be because you need to leave school for some reason. Once you drop below that, you will enter a grace period, and after that grace period has concluded, you'll have to begin repayment. For Stafford loans, which are the most common type of loans, the grace period is 6 months. For Perkins loans, which are largely now discontinued by the government, but there are still some people who do have them from earlier usage, Perkins loans have a grace period of 9 months. And finally, parent loans have 60 days after the loan is fully disbursed to act as a grace period before needing to engage in repayment. How much you have to pay each month will depend on a couple of different things. It'll depend on the size of your debt, how many loans do you have, what is the overall size of your student loan debt, the length of your repayment period, whether that be 10 years, as is typical, or potentially a longer period of time, and it'll also depend on the repayment plan that you choose. One of the most common is the standard repayment plan, which is a fixed amount paid each month. This is the standard plan, though there are some options that will be on the coming slides. So outside of the typical standard consistent monthly rate repayment plan, where you would pay a certain amount every month, the same amount each month, there are some other payment options that might be worthwhile to consider. There is the income contingent repayment plan, which is where your monthly payment is reevaluated based on what your adjusted gross income is. So if you make a lower amount of money in a particular year, you will face lower monthly payments. But of course, if you make more money, you'll have higher monthly payments. This can be beneficial for if monthly payments become very demanding of your finances. However, likely you will end up either taking longer or end up paying more in interest. So that's certainly something to consider, but there is the benefit of the monthly payments. There is also the option of deferment, which is a postponement of repayment. There are a couple different circumstances where that happens. If you're in school currently, such as for myself as a graduate student, I'm in school deferment. If you're experiencing economic hardship, if you're on parental leave, if you're in the military. So these are instances where you might see deferment, where you won't have to pay at that time. And there's also the option of forbearance, which is usable in more circumstances, but compared to deferment, you will continue to be charged interest. Deferment is when interest is paused typically, whereas forbearance, interest still accrues. But both of them are an opportunity to pause payments. There are a few select instances where loans can either be discharged or forgiven. For the most part, your loans are not able to be forgiven. However, if you work in a public service position, such as being a full-time teacher for 10 consecutive years in a elementary or secondary school that works with students from low-income families, or any other kind of public service position, certainly this is something that may be of interest to you, and we encourage you to look on the website as well as talk with your financial aid advisor. In rare cases of bankruptcy, though most commonly bankruptcy is not something that can discharge or lead to loan forgiveness. Finally, if you experience total or permanent disability or death, that is an instance where your loans would be discharged and forgiven. One option that is definitely of interest to many students is the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Plan. This is something that you can qualify for if you meet a couple of different conditions. One, and this is something you'll want to be sure to clear up with your financial aid advisor, is that you have to consolidate your loans into a direct income-based repayment plan. To find out kind of what more that means, definitely talk with your financial aid advisor. They can help you figure that out. You have to work for a particular type of company. It has to be either a nonprofit company or agency, and it can only really be in certain careers that actually meet the requirements. If you want to find out more information about this, check out studentaid.gov, and definitely talk to your financial aid advisor at Boston College or your student loan servicer, whoever they may be, in order to get more information. This is a plan where after 10 years of consistent payments, you can see a significant portion of your loan forgiven, meaning you no longer have to pay for that. So definitely something that's of interest to many students. Here is an additional list with a bit more information on what qualifies you for a loan dischargement or forgiveness. For these next couple of slides, we're going to talk about the loan exit process. In mid-March, you can expect to receive an email from the Office of Student Services regarding the exit process for your loans. This can either be done in person or online, and the process involves the office going through some of the different expectations of you on how to pay back your loans after graduation and other things to take into account. And they can also help you come up with a plan for what might work best for you. If you have any kind of questions about this, do contact the Office of Student Services. Here we have listed a couple of different tips for what might be important to do after you graduate and when you're exiting from school, when you're beginning to repay your loans. One I really want to highlight is being sure to provide up-to-date information to your lender. So make sure they have an up-to-date email address for you, make sure they have an up-to-date contact number and physical address for you. This one thing can certainly help you prevent defaulting on your loans, because if they cannot contact you, it can lead certainly to a very painful process where it might end up with a negative outcome. Typically here we would have a bit of a discussion on some of these topics, such as the job search, job offers, salary, benefits, first year on the job, negotiation. However, we can't do that necessarily since this is an online recording. However, if you do have any questions on any of these topics, please feel free to email us at success@bc.edu. Now we'll begin to talk a bit about career success and what it looks like when you start to enter the world of work after graduation. BC offers several different resources for students who are looking for support in the job search process. We have career advisors available at the Career Center who can help you with your resume, help you with various questions about interviewing, help you look into networking opportunities, and also help you with the overall job search. We also have career fairs, seminars, and other kinds of alumni connections that can help support you during the job search process. One common misconception that a lot of students have is that their major equals their career. For a lot of students, that's not the case. For instance, I know individuals who have gotten degrees in mental health counseling and now work in financial aid kind of positions. Your major does not necessarily determine your career, and there are a lot of different options for what can come of that. One of the things to take into account when you're searching for a job is both external factors and internal factors. Externally, is the job that you're doing mentally stimulating, or is it perhaps feeling mentally draining? Are the outcomes as the product of your work rewarding? Are you going to be able to contact people, to be in contact with people if that's something that you enjoy? And what kind of relationships do you have with your coworkers? Internally, do you have an interest in the type of work you're doing? Does it align with your values? Do you feel confident about the work that you're doing? Does it offer you, or rather, do you have the ability to adjust and adapt to some of the different kind of circumstances? And lastly, how optimistic do you feel about the job? What kind of positive expectations or perhaps negative expectations do you have about it? These are some of the factors to consider when determining whether or not you'd be satisfied in a particular career. We definitely encourage you to take some time to research both the overall career path as well as some of the different job titles available in that career path. You want to have an idea of what knowledge is required, what are some of the skills and abilities that are required for that particular type of career or position. You want to kind of have an idea of what they're looking for. And also you want to be sure that you know what you have and see if what you have, what kind of skills, abilities, and knowledge you have matches up with what an employer needs. So there are a couple of different resources that we'd recommend that you would use for trying to research individual companies. There's of course the company's website where they would presumably describe their company in a bit of detail. There is Volt, which is part of the Eagle Network. It's a resource that Boston College offers. It's a good networking tool and also a good place to read up a bit about some of the companies There are trade and professional journals, so for myself in the psychology field, that might be an APA journal. There's the BC Career Center, which you can see we've linked here in the slides, which has a good amount of resources for students to use. There is LinkedIn, which is an online social media service that allows you to connect with different people working in different companies. It can be a good opportunity to maybe talk to some of the people that work for those companies. And then lastly, there are online job search websites like Monster and Indeed, where you can maybe get a bit information about what jobs are available and maybe about the companies that are hiring. Listed here are a couple of different resources you can use for trying to research your salary, or at least what your expected salary should be. Salary.com and ONET are both fairly similar in that they involve getting estimates for particular job titles. Glassdoor is a bit different in that it also allows you to do job search, similar to some of the other resources we included in these slides. Bureau of Labor Statistics and America's Career InfoNet are a bit different in that they involve more information from the federal government data sets. Those are certainly much larger picture kind of information, whereas some of the other resources can be more useful for trying to get an estimate about your particular job title. Definitely take a look at all of these, though. There is certainly a lot of benefit to be had from knowing what you are worth. After using some of these resources on the previous slides to have an idea of what your salary would be, you'll have an idea of what you're worth, and make sure to keep that in mind when you're trying to decide whether or not to accept a job offer. Be sure not to accept it right away. It certainly is always prudent to wait and see what other options might come up or see what negotiations might be able to transpire. You want to be sure to clarify what is the net or the take-home pay. There's lots of different things that come out of your paycheck, such as taxes, dental, healthcare, and all of those things can take a relatively sizable income and make it significantly smaller. Make sure to have a copy of your offer in writing. This can be useful if you run into any kind of issues in the future so that you can have this as evidence. And if you do decide to counter the offer, make sure to explain what you have to offer and why you think you're worth more. In the instance that you receive a job offer that is just completely unacceptable or undoable, there are some considerations you might want to have. First, when we say that an offer is unacceptable, we mean that the wage, for instance, might be unlivable, or that it requires a particular set of circumstances that are just beyond your means. You will want to consider that you're potentially putting the job offer at risk when you're asking for a different offer. So consider that the original offer might potentially be rescinded. You'll want to explain specifically what is lacking in the initial offer. Maybe is it the healthcare benefits, maybe is the wage is too low. You'll want to have a proposed solution, so that could be a higher wage, that could be different types of benefits, and you want to appeal to their position in vanity. People certainly enjoy when you appeal to them in that kind of way. Here are just a few more tips to keep in mind for when you're trying to negotiate. We also have some other presentations available on our website that go more into detail on negotiation. And also I would encourage you to take a look at the links below. They can help answer some more of your questions. You can always feel free to email us as well. When you receive a salary offer, you want to be sure to get it in writing for in case there are potential issues later on. It's good to have that written down. You want to also consider, are you working in a state that has income tax? Massachusetts, for instance, does have income tax. That is something that will be taken out of your salary. How often do you get paid? Do you get paid weekly, bi-weekly, monthly? This is something to consider to see if that potentially lines up with your financial needs. And also consider some of the other things that are taken out. For instance, if healthcare benefits are taken out, that is something that will be withdrawn from and decrease the salary that is posted. So there are some benefits to take into mind when you're trying to evaluate a job offer. First, certainly we encourage you to follow this link where it goes into a bit of detail about what are some of the different benefits available, but just to highlight some of them, there's health and life insurance. also different types of optional insurances like dental or disability. So those would be a benefit in that you can have your employer pay for part of the health insurance. That can be something that would certainly be a valuable part of a job offer package. There's also retirement benefits, such as, for instance, a 401k is usually one of the most common ones. For instance, maybe the employer matches payments up to a certain percent towards your retirement planning. That can be certainly something that would be nice to have. Tuition reimbursement. Boston College, for instance, for many of its employees, does offer tuition reimbursement for employees that are also taking classes. That is, I know for myself, something that would be highly desirable. There might be a company car, there might be company benefits regarding gas mileage. This is especially the case if you're working a sales job. And potentially you might see reimbursement for wardrobe. So say, for instance, there is a uniform. This is something certainly that could be a benefit of the job as well. So just to go over some of the top reasons why employees might find themselves getting fired. This is something we certainly hope does not happen to you, but certainly review some of these top reasons below. A lot of them, as you can probably see, are largely interpersonal, pertaining to honesty and professional behavior. As long as you're honest and engaging in professional behavior and avoiding engaging in some of these unprofessional activities here, that will certainly help reduce your chances of getting fired. Definitely take a look at the link below to read a bit more on this. As far as engaging in strategies that can hopefully lead to success in your position, you want to be sure to demonstrate your maturity, that even though you might be young perhaps, since many college students are still quite young when they graduate, that you can still be a mature, respectful, and responsible employee. You want to learn about what is the culture of the organization and try to adapt to that. For instance, if everyone likes to go out to eat together for lunch, that might be something to try to get involved in. You want to maintain a good impression, make a good impression initially, have kind of realistic expectations. Certainly things might be different to start, might potentially be a slower workload, might potentially be a higher workload depending on the place. These are things certainly to consider, and to try to develop a good relationship with your boss, one that is respectful but also at the same time close, since your boss is going to be someone who you're going to lean on a lot for your work, and that the relationship you have with them is very important towards your employment. You'll also want to try to find ways to build your credibility in the workplace, that you are a capable employee. You'll want to try to find mentors. Maybe that can be employees who have been there for a while and who can offer you support as you go through the process of working there and getting used to the situation. You'll want to be sure to dress professionally. What that means can certainly vary from location to location. You'll want to try to develop transferable skills, these skills potentially being helpful in other kinds of positions in your future. And you'll want to avoid some of the different traps, such as office politics or office gossip. Getting involved in that can potentially create some negative work environments. Like we said before on an earlier slide, you're never stuck in a particular career path, and it's always possible to change to a different kind of career focus. Your major does not necessarily determine what your career is going to be, and similarly, your early career experience does not necessarily have to define where your career is going to end. So before we conclude, I just want to leave you with a couple of resources that you can use. You can visit our website, www.bc.edu/successfulstart, to find out about some of our other programming and workshops. You can email us at successfulstart@bc.edu with any questions you have. And you can visit both our Twitter and our Facebook page to view our social media programming, to view what kind of information we share there. Definitely, though, if you have any questions, please reach out to us at our email address, and hopefully some of this information up here was of help to you.